Have you ever heard of a company culture so intense that people who went through it say that, even religious brainwashing seems kind of tame by comparison? Well, today we are diving deep into the world of Japan's black companies. It's a term for workplaces that push people way beyond their limits, and we're going to focus on one specific and pretty shocking real-world example that some former employees claim is actually the worst on the entire planet. Let's get into it. Now let that sink in for a second. This isn't some quote from a history book about working conditions a century ago. This is from 2022. It's from a person describing a modern company. I mean, that one sentence really sets the stage for what we're about to uncover. A culture that goes way, way beyond just a tough job. So what exactly is a black company? The Japanese term is Baraku Kigyo, and it basically means a business that is exploitative on pretty much every level. And look, we're not just talking about pulling a few late nights at the office. We are talking about a systematic combination of insane working hours, tons of unpaid overtime, constant verbal abuse, and this kind of psychological pressure that's really designed to just break people down. It's a total disregard for a person's well-being. To really wrap our heads around this whole phenomenon, we've got to look at a specific case. So, for the rest of this, we're going to be looking at Gulliver, which is a major used car dealership in Japan, now known as Item. And by looking at testimonials from people who used to work there, we can start to piece together a pretty chilling picture of what life was allegedly like on the inside. And here we are again with that powerful quote. Another former employee said this, and it just cuts right to the bone. The claim here isn't just that the company was tough or demanding to make more money. No, the claim is that the company's practices were designed to achieve total control, and that this whole process of indoctrination started from the moment you walked in the door. So how does something like that even begin? Well, according to former employees, it starts with something called the Gulliver Sales 10 Commandments training. I want you to just imagine this. You're in a room and you are forced to shout a list of company rules for 8 hours straight, nonstop. And while you're doing this, instructors are yelling at you, telling you you're not loud enough, that you're not passionate enough. Testimonials describe seeing other new recruits just break down, sobbing, their voices totally shot by the end of the day, all just to get some examiner's approval. And this one line tells you everything you need to know about the ideology. This is one of those 10 commandments. So what's it really saying? It's saying that failure is never because of the product or the market. It's always your fault. The blame is put 100% on the individual, creating this incredibly high-stakes, no-excuses environment from day one. So what about the work hours? Well, the gap between what's on paper and what people actually lived through, it's just staggering. Officially, the hours are 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sounds reasonable, right? But according to former employees, going home before midnight, before the date literally changed on the clock, was considered a good day. Working 30 days in a row wasn't seen as a problem. It was something people bragged about. And monthly overtime could just skyrocket past 120 hours. For all that insane work, you'd think the pay would have to be pretty good, right? I mean, it must be worth it. Well, on paper, it looks great. The company's own financial reports state an average annual salary of over 5 million yen. And in Japan, that is a very respectful, even desirable salary. But that official number? Yeah, it hides a much, much darker reality. But here's the reality check. A former employee says that a store manager, and that's a position with a lot of responsibility, could end up taking home as little as 150,000 yen a month. That's about $1,000 US. How? Because so much of the pay is tied to hitting these brutal performance targets that, for a lot of people, that official average salary is just a complete fantasy. And that pressure to perform, well, it apparently spills over into what former employees describe as just extreme abuse. Testimonials are filled with these awful stories of superiors screaming things like, "Die," or "I'll kill you." And remember that first quote, physical violence, kicking and punching, described as normal? They talk about being screamed at until midnight for not hitting their targets. And maybe one of the most chilling accounts alleges that a senior manager actually went to the home of a sick employee to physically drag them into work. So when the pressure becomes that unbearable, what happens? You get a practice known as Chibaku Eigyo. It literally translates to self-destruct sales, and it is as bad as it sounds. This is a really key concept. When employees just can't meet their impossible sales quotas, they are allegedly forced to buy the products themselves. They're pushed to take out loans to buy cars from their own company or to pressure their friends and family into buying them. And we're not talking about small amounts of money here. The financial burden is insane. This one former employee from just last year reported that their manager forced all 5 people at their branch, manager included, to buy cars. The total price tag for those 5 employees? Over 10 million yen. They were basically forced to become customers just to keep their jobs. So you're probably thinking, isn't this all illegal? I mean, where are the legal protections in all this? Well, according to these accounts, those protections are actively crushed. Employees were allegedly told they couldn't take paid leave, even for a family member's funeral. The culture basically teaches you to never ever mention labor law. And for those who are brave enough to try and assert their rights, they reportedly faced retaliatory transfers, getting shipped off to a branch in the middle of nowhere as a very clear warning to everyone else. Okay, so this all sounds absolutely brutal. But let's zoom out for a second. How does this kind of environment actually stack up on a global scale? Could this really be one of the worst workplaces in the world? Let's try to put it in context. This is maybe the single most jaw-dropping claim we found from a source, comparing a publicly traded Japanese company to the labor conditions in North Korea. That is an unbelievably extreme statement, but it really highlights the profound level of despair that some people who went through the system felt. Now, for a more concrete comparison, let's look at China's infamous 99/6 culture. You've probably heard of it, working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. That's a grueling 72-hour work week. But according to one source, during a new store opening at Gulliver, the schedule was 6 a.m. until 3 a.m. the next day, with 0 days off. If you do the math, that's a potential 133-hour work week. That is nearly double the already infamous 99/6 schedule. So how is that even physically possible? How do you maintain that level of control? Apparently, through a system of total control called Terakoya. New recruits are required to live together in a company dormitory for their first 2 years. Sources describe it as being under 24/7 surveillance. Your private life is just gone. There is no escape from the job, because even your home is part of the company. And the result of all of this at the end of the day is a devastating human cost. We're talking about former employees reporting things like adjustment disorders and deep depression, people physically collapsing from exhaustion. That training and the daily abuse just strips away a person's dignity. And with such a high turnover rate, new hires are allegedly treated not like people but as consumables, just resources to be used up and then replaced. The stories and the testimonials we've looked at today paint a really grim picture of a system that seems to demand absolutely everything from its employees. It forces us to ask a much bigger question. When a corporate culture demands absolute obedience above all else, above the law, above health, and above basic human dignity, who is really paying the ultimate price?